Alright, hi guys, James here from 5 Rating 22. Today we're going to learn another technique. Today's technique is layering. This is an exciting one for me. Sorry about that, I should have did that. Because it's one that I use on a lot of my paintings. Like 90% plus of the time. I use layering to add my highlights. As well as my depth sometimes, or my shadows. So, layering. Now, if you haven't watched the previous video about gradients, I would highly advise going back to that video and so you can get the understanding of what a gradient is, because layers, or layering, is a way of getting gradients, of producing a gradient. So it's good to have that concept down. But we're going to go ahead and continue on. If not, or if you already know what a gradient is when talking about miniatures or painting, you know, feel free to just continue on. So, let's see here. I just want something to help me point a little bit. Okay. So, layers. Layers are subsequent steps of applying paint in a chronological order, you know, light to dark, dark to light, as what a gradient is. Layering is just producing a gradient, pretty much, in its most basic form. Now, the coolest thing about layering is that it's a rather simple technique to grasp the concept of. So it's something you can get into fairly easily and quickly, and then it's also a technique that can be practiced and mastered, and then further used to produce very, very smooth, very believable and nice gradients. Now, the sad part is I actually just this is my second time making this technique video. I went through and did the whole thing, painting some nice things up and all this and that, and then I realized that I had misstated some things out of rushing it through, and it got way too long. So it is going to be a little longer one, but I don't want it to be 2 hours long or anything like that, or 40 minutes long like my last one was. So layering, like I said, is something that I use quite often. So what I've got here, I've got one of my Reaver jet bikes for my Dark Elder army, and I want to show you I used layering to highlight the armor on this. Now, highlights are, the brighter parts of armor due to it being closer to the edges of it, as would be normal on the hard edge of something in real life. So, if you can look in there, let's see how well we can get this to pop out. Alright, so you see that dark little kind of abstract square shape there? That's the base coat, which was done in a blackish green, a very dark blackish green, bluish color that I mixed up myself. It's very dark, it's pretty much black. And then right next to that, if you can see those lines there where there's a dark greenish blue, very dark, so the transition is not very drastic. That's my first layer that I applied around all the edges, around like this vents here, and along the edge of the armor here. And you can see that throughout the areas here. So that was my first layer that I built up for my highlight. It was a very dark bluish green, and then the next one was a brighter bluish green color, which is actually kind of right there, as you can see, just that little section there, or along the edge. If I can get this to come in all right, you can see there. Oh, here, let's go back here. That's a better idea. It's a little more visible. Okay. Excuse me. Alright. So you can see the base coat in there. Oh, now this is not gonna come out right. Alright, there we go. Okay, it's kind of right. So the base coat's in there. Then you can see that darkish green layer at the tip of the brush going around, and then there's a lighter bluish green right in between there for my second layer. And then on the very sharpest of points, I have a very light bluish green rotting flesh mixture for my top highlight, or my last layer. So that's a form of layering. that I did to do the highlights on the armor, and I actually used this throughout my Dark Elder army, and it looks very nice. It's not as time consuming as wet blending, which I'm not going to get into great depth about because we'll learn that later on, but it's something that can be used to add highlights to pretty good ends. It can look rather nice. So what I've got here is a couple pieces of plastic card that I, scrap pieces here that I had, and I took here to kind of give, because I wanted to show layering kind of blown up, so you could see it a lot easier than on, like on that bike is a lot harder to see. But this is what layering is. It's subsequent layers of paint where you're changing the color from a dark to a light. I know it's kind of hard to see, but there is white up there. So you can see this is 3 layers here, 3 different colors. It's actually these ones right here. I've got a black, a gray, and a white. I've got a black, then a gray, then a white. And so that's layering. I just layered it up, and this is in chroma or grayscale, where it's just black and whites, make it kind of easy. So there's the dark color. We're going to a mid-tone color and then to a highlight color, and that was just done with right out of the bottle, and I'm leaving kind of equal parts of each color to my layering. Now, this would be considered a very rough gradient, as we talked about before, where it's you can see the transition very, very easily, where it goes from black to gray and gray to white, where it's very visible. It's not a smooth gradient. Now, of course, when you bring it back, it starts to look smoother. Your eyes have a harder time finding that defined line. Still not as much from here, but now remember this is blown up, so on a miniature it's going to be even less visible, or it's going to be easier for your eyes to transition, and it's going to look smoother. So layering can be used very well to make gradients that look somewhat smooth. Now this is the easiest way of making a gradient, is doing layering, because you're not doing a lot of wet blending, and it's also the fastest due to the fact that you're not spending a whole lot of time in there meticulously trying to get that gradient to be as smooth as possible. Now, like I said before, though, it's one of those techniques that you can grow upon, and you can get much better at it, improve your skills with it, and use it to great effect. Now, here what I did, again, I'm only using these 3 colors of paint, but by doing using the paint thinned out to a glaze consistency, I can actually use a glaze, more of a glaze for my painting. And again, glaze is more talking about where you're actually using a paint on top of another color, or a thin paint on top of the base coat color, the underlying color, to actually change its color. So what I did here was I came in with the black. That was my first layer. I painted in a line of black. I then took my gray and I thinned it out almost to a milk, close to a milk consistency, pretty thin, and I applied a thin coat, a thin layer there. So that's my layer there. It's still the same gray paint. It's just thinned out real thin, so you can somewhat see through it. It's translucent. It's more of a glaze, so you get that different color there. It's a little bit darker than this. Now, then I went and just took the gray again, thinned out, but since I brought it up a ways, and I just added another layer, and that made it more opaque, or not as see-through, not as translucent. So then I've got a little lighter gray. Then I did the same thing up here. I took white, and white's a harder one to do it with because it's not a very good covering or opaque paint as it is. But I thinned it out to a milk consistency. I went over the gray, more of a glaze over it, so I got that different color. And then again I went and did another coat up a little higher, leaving some of that translucent layer. So by using the 3 paints and thinning them out to a glaze consistency and applying them as more of a glaze, I ended up with 5 layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I ended up with 5 different colors, which, you know, up here, these are just the 3 regulars, and you know, it's about that wide. Now if I would have took this, I widened it out so it'd be easier to see what I was talking about, but if I would have took those 5 shades and put them in about the same width of an area, the gradient would be much smoother, and you can get a lot better at this, getting them doing the glazes a lot better. And monotone sometimes can be rather difficult with the white, and it's something you got to do multiple thin layers with the white to get it to want to act right, but you can get a much smoother gradient by doing it that way. So that's layering. It's just layers of paint, as you can see, going from dark to light, or vice versa, like a gradient. Or it's, well, that it is a gradient, it's just using layering to achieve that gradient. Alright, so then I had another piece of plastic card and I cut it out into a shield, and I wanted to show layering kind of in use. And again, this is not, you know, it was something I did very quick, trying to do it quick on the video, but it gives you an idea. So I base coated it in Dark Angel's green and mixed with some black, and I base coated the whole thing so you get this dark middle color. And then I took 3 colors of green. I had a Dark Angel's green, Snot green, and a Scorpion green from Games Workshop. And I decided that I would use layering to highlight the edge, pretending that this is zenithal lighting. We won't get into that a whole bunch right now, but I'll do another video sometime where I talk about lighting a little bit more. So we're trying to highlight the, you know, I was trying to highlight, bring up that these edges are more pronounced. They're, you know, they're sticking out, and that's where the light's catching. So, you know, I wanted to highlight the edges, so you can use layering to add highlights to the edge of things, such as on your armor, or even skin tone, or flesh. You can use it on fur, even though, you know, it's you could go in and do layering on fur instead of dry brushing it, and you would get kind of the same effect as you would if you were doing different amounts of dry brushing. So for the first one, I went in with the Dark Angel's green, as you can see right there, and I got that dark thin line there. And then I went in for my second layer with Snot green and did this layer here, and then went in with my final layer of Scorpion green, and again, you know, trying to leave about equal parts of each of the colors left. And then I did that Scorpion green along the edge, so you get that gradient, that change from this base coat color here to the Dark Angel's green to the Snot green to the Scorpion green. So you have a nice little gradient there. Now again, this was done quick, and you can do this a lot smoother and a lot nicer when you're putting it on your miniatures. Again, time kind of judging how much you can put into it and how smooth and nice and even everything you can get it. So but that's what layering is. It's pretty basic. It's something that you'll be able to pick up and get going on hopefully rather quickly and start perfecting that and learning more. And then you know, it's something that you get this concept down, it's going to really help for when we get into other things such as wet blending, or, you know, OSL, non-metallic metals, and the such. So just remember that layering is you're just changing you're making a gradient. You're changing it from a light to a dark, or a dark to a light, and it can even be used for things not going from dark to light or light to dark, but simply changing the color from one color to another. You can use layering to achieve that. So, but this is going to be the most common use of layering, and what most likely you're going to be using it for. So that's layering in a nutshell. I told you it was going to be a little longer. Sorry for that, but hopefully I wanted to, you know, explain it well enough that hopefully you can get a good grasp on it and go from here. And remember that these are, you know, this is defining it, showing you how it's done a little bit, and then you can go on and practice and perfect the skill as you go along. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully you liked it. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends if you really enjoyed it, and of course, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next technique video. Take care. Sorry, I had to, I almost forgot one thing I wanted to talk about or cover with this as well, is that layering can be done, and it doesn't have to consist of 3 colors. You know, as you showed you here, there's 5 there, but it can consist, you know, as little as 2 colors, going from a black to a white, or a darker yellow to a lighter yellow. It can consist of only two colors being layered on top of each other, or it can be as many as a million. Of course, you would never do a million color layering technique on a miniature of our scale. It would be a very smooth gradient if you fit in a million colors, because it'd pretty much be a microscopic line, but it's unrealistic. But most of the time you're going to see between 2 and 5 being the common number, and probably three colors usually being the layer technique, especially for like I showed you on here, the edge highlighting. That's going to be pretty common, and so I just wanted to clear that up real quick, that it can be anywhere from between 2 and as big as numbers you can think of for layering. So it's really personal discretion. How much time do you have to put in? How many layers are you wanting to put in? Remember, again, the more layers you put in, the more time that it's going to take, of course. So that kind of will help judge how many layers you decide to put into or how many colors you're allowed to put in. And again, remembering that you can translucent them, use them more as a glaze, and use only a few colors but actually get quite a few more layers out of it. So just wanted to clear that up real quick. Thank you.